Well, you and I have spoken, and I don't want to labour it because that was my old channel, and this is for the new channel.
Yeah.
Meghan Markle is a prime example. And
yes.
I think we can talk about that a little bit without being overly sensationalist. I mean, it's just a fact that she appears to be somebody, like many celebrities, who uses like, I'm a feminist, I'm doing this nice stuff, but actually you just married a prince.
Yes. I think it's a funny thing. It's one of the few things. There's not. It's a sign of age and a sign of going to therapy as well. I think like there's not much that winds me up, but one of the things I do occasionally get wound up by is I can see these people very, very clearly, and a lot of people can't. And I start to stutter. I'm exasperated. I'm like, how could you possibly not see? I'm indignant with rage. How could you not see? Open your bloody eyes. I sound like my grandfather.
No, but I relate to that, and I'm sure most people listening do as well.
Yeah.
There's nothing more frustrating than when you're like that. Like, it goes back to school. Say you're 14 years old, and like one of the kids in class is being a suck up to the teacher.
Yes.
And it's like, you want to say like, don't you see through that? They will get a good score. Why is no one else seeing what I'm seeing? And I think most people are. But we're not saying anything, and then they're getting away with it.
Yes, and people really are, sorry to say, they're getting away with murder these days, and it's so frequently in my field when the online space of narcissism is just booming. It's exploded since I've been involved since 2011. It's exploded in the last 12, 13 years. And I spoke to a group of therapists this Sunday just gone, and I was like, most of your clients are getting their information about narcissism from people on YouTube like me. They're not getting it from the published research. They're not getting it from they're not getting it from the books. They're getting it from YouTube. And one of the things that I want to shout from the rooftops, because everybody's saying we're in a pandemic of narcissism, we're actually in a pandemic of codependency. Narcissists are very few and far between, but people are like, it seems to be everywhere. I'm like, it really isn't. It's just you idiots keep worshipping them. Stop platforming people who are evil. Stop worshipping people who are clearly have no interest in you. They don't care about you. They're addicted to themselves. They're addicted to their own image, and they're seeking to exploit you, and they feel entitled to do that. But we don't. We're codependent. We're passive, and we let this take place. It's for me, it's one of the few things that still can get me wound up.
Yeah, well, I wonder if as well we're dependent on them as well because they're often promoting messages that we might agree with.
Yes.
So I'm thinking of another narcissist. Before I say these things, I'm already imagining the comments being angry at me. But Greta Thunberg for me is like, she's like alpha narcissist to me. She's like the narcissist of all narcissists, who's of the nice people narcissist, because she's the activist. And I think if you're someone who wants to promote that message, the fact that a 15-year-old at the time she was is saying it in the most simplistic terms, you don't care because you just want to get that message out there.
Yes.
But how could she not have become a narcissist when at 15 years old she was told that she wasn't just smarter and better than everyone, she was more morally virtuous?
She was a little saint. She was the saint of that particular manifestation of environmentalism, this hardcore extreme form of environmentalism, and she was the saint of it. There is something called context-specific narcissism. I remember years ago people getting very angry with Justin Bieber because he got drunk and was punching paps and peed in a flower pot in a 5-star hotel. And I'm like, can you imagine, any of you, what it would be like to be 17 years old and having that much wealth and fame and opportunity thrown at you, as if we'd all just be sat there going, oh, no more cocaine or fame for me, darling. That's quite, no more money. Thank you. I've had enough. No, you'd be grabbing at it with both hands. And eventually, of course,
as you were before we started.
As I were. They just had to wipe me off. There's cocaine everywhere. Eventually, of course, he ends up, as he is now, like he looks to me a pretty broken chap because that fame machine spits people out. There's the double standard as well. So we're incredibly codependent, and then we're massively hypocritical, and we're hiding all of our would be called in Freudian terms, we're disavowing our own dark sides and then projecting it out onto other people. This is not fair. It's not right, and we do it in the name of virtuosity. Who is virtuous? Really, we're humans. We're just out the trees. We just climbed out the jungle. Can everybody calm down with this holier than thou? I would never. Yes, you did. We all did. It's okay. I don't think it's healthy to pretend that the things that happened 60, 70 years ago, these mass psychotic movements, whichever side of the political spectrum they were on, that caused the death of millions, for us to be like, oh no, but not us. Yeah. No, we're more evolved. I'm like, evolution doesn't work like that. You can have like massive brain and physiology evolution in 130 years. It doesn't work like that. We need humility. We need to be humble, and we can say, yes, maybe me. In that context, that's why I brought up context-specific narcissism. If I was Greta Thunberg, age 15, shoved onto that platform, saying those words, and all the adults around me, I was in an echo chamber, they were going, oh, so brave, so wise. Maybe I would have also become a bit obnoxious with it. Maybe you would. Maybe any human being would. We've got to be compassion has to flow both ways. Like if I'm being compassionate, has to flow to me, has to flow to other people. And I look and I see and I go, yeah, I can see what you're doing. But if you keep doing this, and I know you see this, the road we're on now is not a good one. This is a dangerous path we've chosen. Yeah.
And as you say, it's happened so many times throughout history where people have started saying, we're nicer than everyone, we're better than everyone, and then bloodshed.
Yeah.
How do they not see that? We're back to that again. I can't keep going back to that. Why doesn't everyone see it? But they don't see it. But Greta, I think that's an absence of parenting. That's bad parenting, isn't it? To tell your 15-year-old kid that they're better than everyone else and they should be meeting Obama and lecturing him.
I can't imagine that it's anything other than highly narcissistic parenting. You know, I mean, I've never met her parents, I've never seen them, but we don't have to complicate everything and draw psychoanalytic theory into everything. Her parents chose to allow that to happen and maybe even trained her for it. I mean, it's possible that she trained herself, that she's some sort of a high IQ, maybe somewhere on the autism spectrum, virtuoso, who just had a message, believed in it, went out there. But it's likely, forgive my cynicism, that her parents had a hand in it, and her family had a hand in it, and the environment and the culture and the country that she comes from also impacted this. The holier than thou virtue signaling is a good thing because we know what is right. How dare you? How dare you? Like, you're a human being. You've got socks on, right?
Are you deliberately parroting what she said?
Yes. How dare you? How dare you steal my dreams?
My childhood.
My childhood.
What a narcissistic thing to say. Well, she was a kid, so...
Yeah, well, she is a kid. I just think the idea of her or anyone saying, I have the solution and this is how we should live. I'm just like, just chill with that. Yeah. You don't. We really don't. Like, because of the interview, I went and looked at the science as much as I can understand it on climate change. This is not settled science. Why are people acting as though it is?
Like, I wondered, just hearing you say that, what percentage of people listening or viewing suddenly got their back up and they're going, hang on, why am I annoyed? Because I don't know enough about climate change, so I want to listen to what you're going to say now. But I'm just thinking, are there some people going, he's going to be a climate change denier, and they're already ready to pounce?
Yeah, I can't be a climate change denier because, and I'm sorry, but like, if you're on either side of the spectrum on this, you're wrong because none of it is settled science. It seems to be that if you take the consensus from science, which is usually how science works, you've got to look at the thick end of the wedge and say, well, what are the absolute experts saying? It's not conclusive. It's not that there is no, it's very unlikely that human beings are having zero impact on the climate. That's extremely unlikely. It's also extremely unlikely that imminent doom is around the corner in 30 years' time if we don't reduce car emissions. Neither thing is settled science. I forget climate change for a second because I'm not an expert on that, but we can talk about, and we both can, psychologist, journalist, what's the narrative? And how are we constructing that narrative? And how are we conducting the debate? You as a journalist and me as a psychologist can say, well, we can do it without extremism. We can do it without shouting each other down. We can do this without emotional and psychological violence. Let's go facts first, not feelings first, like adults should. Because if we're not going to do that, I have to assume that what I'm consuming is propaganda and is politically motivated.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And even if you were to go with the most extreme end, that in 30, 40, 50 years, we're going to be in a lot of trouble. That's very troubling. But it doesn't mean it's easy, because a lot of people live on the poverty line, depend on the current situation, the current fossil fuels and things like that. So, and that's what she doesn't have the solution for. And too many activists come forward and they don't have a solution. They're just angry at what's going on. And it's like, I would like car exhausts not to be all horrible and smoky and even, just for that. But if that means that some impoverished communities are going to not have any money and put food on the table.
Yeah.
I think about these things, but I don't think it goes through a lot of activists' minds.
It doesn't seem to, because that would require nuance. And maybe we could say, if you're an activist on either side, because you've obviously read similar research to me. I got mine from Michael Schellenberger cited it, and it's from a guy called Hannes Sacker from this year, March of this year, published from the University of Leipzig, and he's talking about the correlation between dark triad traits and environmental activism. And I would say, on either side of any activists, but like, what is an activist? They're saber rattlers. They're trying to get attention for a cause. They're raising awareness, and they want to, through doing that, affect change in the world. Fine, that's okay. But will it not, by necessity, attract a certain personality type? And do we not need to have some checks and balances and filters for that? Because if you genuinely and sincerely believe in this cause, that cause, but leaving aside environmentalism for a second, that's fine. But are you here because you're angry with your father? Are you here because you're struggling with drug addiction? Are you here because you're diagnosed with psychopathy, borderline personality disorder? Because we know, the psychologists are too polite, they won't say, but they know very well. Jordan Peterson avoided saying it. For the first 5 years he was famous. I had people who are following me who went to see him, ask him about borderline personality disorder and political activism. For the first 5 years, he wouldn't answer the question. Now he does. Because it's known. We know that it's not just borderlines, for the people who then go crazy in the comments. It's not just borderlines who engage in this, but we know there's a correlation between political activism and certain disorders that involve emotional dysregulation, like borderline personality disorder, manic depressives as well. Because they want to be part of a crowd screaming against authority figures, because that's what's already, if they didn't have that, they'd be shouting at the wall at home, because they're unhappy, they're traumatized, they're in pain, they need a release valve. And we know this. You've seen the footage, the memes, the same as I have on Instagram. People shouting slogans and calling people literally Hitler and this and that. And then when they're actually interviewed and they say, why did you just shout that? Do you know what you're saying? No, I don't. I don't know what the words mean, but I feel, okay, you feel wonderful. We are adults. We're not children. If you go feelings first, facts second, that's only acceptable to somebody under the age of 12. Everybody else has to do better.
Peter Boghossian was on this channel recently. Did you see that? The famous video he did in Portland State University when there were people on the roof. Peter Boghossian does this game where he goes and asks a question that's controversial, and you have to stand either at that's totally disagree or agree or in the middle. And he just wants to know, okay, how would you move a bit further this way or that way? It's really interesting. And he did one that was a bit controversial, I suppose, in front of the social sciences building in Portland State University, which is the place you don't want to do this. And there were only two genders.
Oh,
and then you
have brave man.
Yeah, and you have to stand then in the specific place. And there's like someone doing it, I think I actually don't agree. And it's like interesting. You can have the conversation. I think there are more genders. Okay, that's interesting. Why do you think that? And a bunch of people, students and teachers, I think, from the social, they were on top of the building looking down, swearing at him, screaming at him, shouting horrible things. And eventually they came down, like arms folded, just like, why are you doing this?
Yeah.
And he's like, do you want to know what the game is? And they didn't want to know. They're just like, well, no, because it's offensive. And all this stuff. And they're ganging up, and he was so calm. He's
great. He's really. I follow him on Instagram, and I love watching his videos.
Oh, you got to watch that later then.
Yeah, he's a good example of just the kind of thing that I suppose I'm alluding to, which is we got to bring the Socratic method back to the way we hold dialogue. We have to bring reason back. Socratic method would be, strictly speaking, for the Socratic method to be the Socratic method, you say there's two genders. Let's take that as an example. I say, no, there's as many genders as you want. Before we debate, you have to express my position to me, to my full satisfaction.
Oh, I like that.
And I have to express your full position to you, if it's not to your satisfaction, I have to keep going until I get it right. And then you say, go on then, lads, now argue. Now I fully know what you mean, and you're hearing me, and I'm hearing you. It's simple.
Why don't we all do that?
That's base level philosophy. It's like philosophy 101. And we should absolutely, imagine how many debates would end if we simply were forcing each other, forcing is a bit, the dictator in me is coming out.
Imagine how many, if we force people with handcuffs.
If we encourage them gently to engage in the Socratic method, we would resolve so many issues so quickly. I mean, again, it's away from narcissism, away from ego. We've got this platform, we've got social media, we want to be seen, and you want your gotcha moment. So like Andrew Gold destroys narcissism expert with 2 million views. Narcissism's not real. And I'm there going, oh, sorry about that. People love it. Okay. So that's the environment. That's the incentives that are created in the environment. It's incentives driven. I got this from Konstantin Kisin, and you'll be speaking to this weekend on Triggernometry. People are motivated by incentives. Okay, so what's the incentive here? Well, it's to kind of be a dick. Who's going to get heard? Who's going to get millions of views on YouTube? Who's going to get millions of views? This, a gentle, reasonable conversation, you'll get views, but you want screaming, you want shouting, you want clothes torn and people banging their heads on the table. It's like two chaps just having a polite conversation. I ain't going to do it. Let's go. We're doing it for the views.
Yeah. Well, they literally do start boxing all the time, don't they? The big YouTubers.
Yes.
Did you see Alex O'Connor? Is that his name? Alex J. O'Connor? But I think this is Cosmic Skeptic.
Right.
He had Peter Hitchens on.
Okay.
It's probably the biggest sort of meltdown I've ever seen on TV or YouTube. It's extraordinary. And Peter Hitchens just goes off for no reason. I really think I don't understand what the reason was. It was because Alex was asking him the same sort of questions, and he gets cranky.
Yeah.
He got cranky.
I like Peter Hitchens, but
so do I. So do I. But this time it was like I can't defend this because he goes off the screen and he's just going like he's talking for half an hour off the. You can just sort of hear him. And every now and then he comes back in and he's like, and another thing you did was this, and Alex is just like. Oh, and he's going, what you don't realise is you've had me under false pretenses. And it's great, but it's like the biggest video he's ever done, Alex O'Connor now, because it's just like millions of people, because we all wanted to watch it.
We love that,
I watched it every day. So
couldn't get out of bed without it. But that's the environment we've created. And so it rewards polarization. It rewards a lack of reason. It rewards emotionality and extremism. Well, I gently put forward the notion, ladies and gentlemen, that that's dangerous. That's not smart. We've got to do better than that because, look, in all due humility, like, whatever the issue is, it's environmentalism, it's the current situation, Israel-Palestine. We are mortal beings. We're not here for long. We can make this a fucking hellscape if we try. Or we can edge towards something that is peaceful and pleasant for us to live in, because life is hard enough. At the moment, we're going the hellscape route because, I don't know, ego. It just seems to be something in the human ego, some dark side in human nature that we can't integrate is taking over, and it seems to take over cyclically. So we've had several decades of unusual peace, and now as a species where we see, to me, it feels like we're gearing up for the old gulags and genocide and jackboots again because, I don't know, unintegrated shadow, we've disavowed too much of our own animalistic nature. I don't know what it is, but I sense bloodshed. I sense imminent bloodshed and imminent chaos. It's like the peace is too much for us to deal with.